Hello, my name is Jeeva Raghunath. I am a storyteller author, lives in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. I am very happy to be a part of this project by Riyadh on the Clippers. Well, I grew up among storytellers. My grandmother, my grandfather, my mother, my uncles, my sisters, my cousins, my brothers all told me stories. Particularly my grandmother told stories at dinner time. And she would take a big cauldron, add rice, curry, the sambar, mix it, make it into balls and give it to us. And we would take it on our palms and eat, and she would start telling stories. Oh, she told such fantastic stories. Many that she had made up and some she had heard over the years. To me, Harry Potter was not a surprise because she told such fantasy stories even at that period in the 1960s. I was born in 1956, so you can imagine in those days telling such stories was amazing. And that kind of went into my system. Just like all other systems in the body, I guess the story system also grew in me. And I developed a natural flair for stories. I always had people around me. I will go paka telling something or the other, and people were quite fascinated. Of course, at that point, I didn't think about storytelling as a profession, but I went on and on and on. Now, to my greatest surprise, my first job as a preschool teacher came to me because I was like taking care of the children during sports day, the college sports day at WCC. And my principal saw the way I handled, and I was telling them stories and singing songs. She just picked me up and she said, "You want to take charge of the nursery?" And I went there. So that's how I started my career as a preschool teacher. Then of course I taught French. Then again I had my own school. Lots of things happened. When I met my friend Radhika Menon, the head of the Tolika publishers. I mean, we grew up together. We were childhood friends. We were classmates. And she said, "Why don't you take up, book sales?" I said, "Marketing, I'm a teacher." She said, "No, you have the gift of the gap, give it a shot." And that's how I went into it. And of course, I love children. So children's books were such a joy. Tulika had just started as a year-old when I joined. And a couple of books were there. And I started visiting schools and things like that. Then what happened was Kathy Spagnoli's book was to be published by Radhika Menon at Tulika. And what I had to do was do the translation. It came as a surprise because the person who had to do the translation was not available, and the book had to go to press immediately. So I just did my thing. Not that I was very strong in Tamil at that point of time. Of course, now I'm much better in translation. So I just did the book. And for the book launch, I did the story. It was an activity-based. It was a paper tearing story. And somehow, I couldn't just tear and tell the story. So I added songs to it. So for the book launch, when I did it, people said, "Wow, you're a great storyteller." I said, "Huh? What's that, storyteller?" Then my friend said, Listen. Don't be so ignorant. Just smile and say thank you." I smiled and said thank you. And then what happened was, very strangely, I won't say strangely, but what happened was, the next day, there was a write-up about my storytelling. I said, "Hey, I've been a teacher for a long time, not a single line of appreciation. And today I tell a story and tomorrow I'm on the press. That's so cool." But that was not what motivated me. What I strongly believe is my passion for stories, my passion to tell stories. So I think the stories chose me and said, "Hey, you're the right person. Come on, go out in the world and tell to everybody." And I guess the stories chose me to be a storyteller. And that's how the storyteller was born. This is my 23rd year. 22 years back I was born as a storyteller, as a professional storyteller. Though I have been telling stories since 5 years. And that's how I started the journey. So it was first translation. And then Radhika said, "Come on, you write a book." I said, "Me? Write a book?" She said, "Come on, you can do it." And I said, "All right." And I just tried. And Malli was my first book. And it did very well. And of course, it took about almost 15 years to get the second book of Malli, the sequel to it. Meanwhile, I wrote many stories. I published about 12 books with Tulika and 2 books which were co-produced with Swedish writers and illustrators in Sweden. And I've translated over 65 books. Sometimes when I look back at my first translation, I feel not so good. But of course, experience, practice makes a person perfect. So my journey started like this, and now with two of my other friends, Kausalya and Kanchana, we started Kathai Kalata, an organization to spread the joy of stories. So we run international storytelling festivals under the Alamaram, meaning banyan tree. For we strongly believe it was under the Alamaram stories began. And that's how we've been doing. We completed 6 years of festival, bringing over 40 tellers, international tellers to India from all over the world. Unfortunately, we had planned this year as well. We had even booked our tellers, but we couldn't make it due to pandemic. But probably next year we'll be back in the game. So that's my little story. So what I'd like to share is that, I have not been trained by anybody to both tell stories or write stories. So I strongly believe that if you are passionate about something, the passion can change into profession. And this is through my experience. And it's all acquired skill. And if I can acquire, why not you? Why not each one of you out there? Go on, follow your heart, and I'm sure you'll be a winner. Thank you so much, Riyadh, for this opportunity. Goodbye. Loads of love. Nandri.